I was having a little chat online this morning with my friend Anne McShane about this article, and I thought it would be useful to share some of what we were talking about with you so that you could also benefit from what I see in this article is actually a lot of misinformation and a lot of it contributes a lot to the confusion that people have around nutrition. So I just want to kind of walk through a little bit. The very first thing, as I say, I see all kinds of misinformation online all the time, but right from the beginning, when I saw this headline, "Can the human body digest red meat?" I suppose it's a good question. It's a fair. All questions are fair game, but the way that this whole article and this headline is posed really kind of reduces the discussion to a very simplistic black or white way of looking at things. You know, when you look at any particular nutritional factor or any food, it's this is the thing that often gets my goat is this kind of reduction or listing of, well, here are the list of all the good foods and here are the list of all the bad foods. And of course, things don't work like that. It completely ignores any sense of individuality, of context, of proportion, of quantities, and so on. There's a lot that's kind of implied by that headline, which is going to be lacking in the arguments that follow. So just wanted to point that out from the get-go. Now let's go through, let's see, what were the first things that caught my eye here. Okay, here it talks about red meat in general. It's basically anything that's not, any meat that's not fish or poultry or white meat. It's, as it says, it is very, very high in nutrients, essential minerals, vitamin B12, protein, but it does say that the benefits of red meat are offset by its high contents of cholesterol and saturated fat. Now, as if you've read earlier posts on my blog, or if you've read other sources elsewhere, you'll realize that this is one of the most damaging myths there are in terms of nutrition. The whole what I call the cholesterol myth is a very, very serious issue and needs to be overturned everywhere we see it. I'll put some links in below so you can read up more about that, and it is well worth your time if you're not with what the cholesterol myth is actually about. Of course, the short answer is that the cholesterol myth is really there, kind of designed as a way of selling statin drugs. But anyways, I'll put some links in so you can research that further. But as soon as I saw this in the article, I knew, okay, this such a major nutritional myth that is being used as support for the argument, in my mind, immediately overturns the whole premise of the article. But it does go on into some other misinformation. Let's see here. Yeah, this paragraph here, it talks about the digestion of red meat, and it's very interestingly, it talks about how red meat has a very what does it say here? It is proportionally more digestible than many other food sources. And by digestibility, they're talking about the amount or the ability of our body to extract nutrition from it. So that sounds like a very good thing. And then they end the paragraph by saying, however, it remains in the digestive system for a significantly longer period of time. Now, that's it doesn't really explain that. Is something being in the digestive system for a longer period of time necessarily a bad thing? If so, why? It doesn't really explain that. And given their first point, that it is highly digestible, my first question would be, well, if something is so nutrient rich and so highly digestible, then wouldn't the longer time in the digestive tract possibly be a good thing in that we're getting a lot more nutrition? I'm just putting that out as a question, but it's not really addressed or answered in this paragraph here. The next paragraph talks about digestive disorders, and it talks about this Dr. Grant Thompson from the University of Ottawa. Ottawa is spelled wrong, by the way. It talks about where does it say this here? It says it may be linked to irritable bowel syndrome, heartburn, and dyspepsia. Well, this may be linked, of course, is a very weak phrase, and there isn't much more detail beyond that. And furthermore, from a Howkins perspective, as I've also written about in some of my recent blogs, the whole idea of this basis or this style of research, this style of medical understanding, the idea of these disease labels, irritable bowel syndrome, heartburn, dyspepsia, these are very generic labels. But the idea of trying to do research on a generic label or link, one generic label to something else is very, very tenuous or tentative at best. The way I think about it, or as I say, if you've read some more of what I've written about disease labels and what a true diagnosis is versus a false label, you'll realize that these kind of labels in themselves it's a bit like trying to draw a map of all the mirages in the desert. It's kind of a very faulty premise from the beginning. Moving down a little bit more in this paragraph where it talks about health risks, again it's talking about some of the studies around the possible links between red meat consumption and cancer rates. But again, there's not a lot of detail as far as what kind of frequency or quantity was studied or was included in this research. And again, it kind of leaves a lot more questions than answers. It also, as I said in the beginning, it's talking about this in a very general way, but it's not really answering as to the individual factors in a person. What is a person's general health status? What is their blood type? What is their gender? What is their lifestyle? All the things that make up a person's nutritional needs and will determine what quantity and what foods are right for them at a certain time in their life and for certain reasons. So again, there may be something valuable in there, but it's not really fleshed out in a very useful way. And finally, coming to the conclusion paragraph here and finding balance, again, the whole conclusion and the purpose of the article is to suggest that red meat should be reduced in its consumption. And again, we get into the broader question of, well, how much is the right amount? How much is too much? And of course, we want to ask those questions in an individual context, but not in this kind of generic way. And the final kicker for me was when at the bottom here, when they're suggesting some alternate protein sources, they include tofu. And again, if you've read some of my previous blogs as well, you'll realize that tofu, or just about any soy foods, soy milks and tofus and all the soy protein products, are actually very damaging to your health. And I'll put a link at the bottom as well to link you back if you want to research more about that. But again, another big red flag for me, that this article is full of a lot of misinformation. It's very misleading, and it actually causes a lot more harm than good, in my opinion.